express our appreciation to the Charlotte Mania Mcgrade Institute, and also to welcome all of you to the Parliamentary Precinct, and also express appreciation for the fact that we have been identified as a partner of this initiative. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Chairperson. Okay, and with that, we can commence our program. We're very excited to be here with all of you. And so I first begin by welcoming the Deputy Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces in the Republic of South Africa, Honorable Ms. Sylvia Lucas, Provincial Minister of Education in the Western Cape, Ms. Debbie Schaefer, Dr. Abraham Sorote, Director of Social Cohesion in the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture. Learners, you're the reason why we're all here today. So I welcome you from Nobantu Primary School in Guguletu, Bonteheuvel High School, Bridgetown High School in Athlone. Children of South Africa, the chairperson of the Charlotte Mania Mcgrade Institute, Mr. Thulasizwe Makanya, members of the media, all the viewers who are watching us in this modern age of social media, I welcome you all and all protocols observed. So in celebrating the spirit of Mam Charlotte Mcgrade, who was a pioneer, an activist, a musician, a power intellectual, the spirit of internationalist, a visionary, all the words that we could use to describe the legacy of this amazing icon. And thus the Charlotte Mania Mcgrade Institute, which has been brought together in honor of her, we stand by 3 pillars. And these pillars are namely education, empowerment, and preserving her legacy. And thus, as custodians of preserving and promoting her legacy, we celebrate her work. So it is our great privilege to bring forth some of the work that we do. And if we want to further her legacy, one such pillar of education is to ensure that South Africa is and stays a reading nation. So we have dubbed today with a theme, which is called Education is Our Heritage and Reading is Our Superpower. And I would like for you to keep that with you and remember that as we go forward beyond just Heritage Month, but as time goes on. I'll say it one more time. Education is our heritage and reading is our superpower. So now I invite you to watch a short video that's going to tell us a little bit more about this icon's life.
I was born to John Hope Manya and Anne Manwe on the 7th of April, 1871, and grew up in Fort Beaufort in the Eastern Cape. My father hadn't gone to school, but would encourage my siblings and I to better our lives. His shortfalls were the seeds of my ambition, and I yearned for the day I would return back to the mountains of my father's village and teach my people. My siblings and I attended Edwards Memorial, a missionary school, where my thirst for knowledge and a burning desire to be educated and to educate was fueled, not only by my teachers, but also by my mother, who had chosen teaching as her vocation in life. In 1885, my father began to attend night school. At the same time, he converted to Christianity and became a lay preacher at the local Presbyterian church. We became churchgoers, and the seed of another of my great callings, my evangelism, was planted. In 1891, my sister Katie and I joined the African Jubilee Choir. Our love of music and religion took us to England, where I learned about women's rights from Emmeline Pankhurst, and more importantly, the right to vote. Our choir did well, and we were invited to tour Canada and the States. I felt America could offer me access to the education I've been wanting all my life. And with the help of Bishop Turner, from the African Methodist Church, I was accepted to Wilberforce University near Zania, Ohio. Wilberforce University was Black-owned and managed and catered mainly for Black students. The institution was aligned to the African Methodist Church that had its origins in the Free African Society that advocated for social equality for Black people. While studying towards my Bachelor of Science, I witnessed incredible leadership and began to see a different future for myself. One in which I could not only teach my people, but one where I could lead them too. In 1903, two major milestones took place. I became the first Black South African woman to graduate with a university degree, and I married the love of my life, Masha. We returned to South Africa with the intention of making a difference and being instruments of change. For about a decade, we focused mainly on our evangelistic pursuits, and I participated in King Sabata Dalinyewo's court in the Transkei, a privilege unheard of for a woman. My husband and I started the South African Wilberforce Institution in Everton, an establishment that has survived both Marshall and myself. In 1912, we found ourselves in Bloemfontein. A group of like-minded people who wanted to change the world came together to form the African Native National. I became a strong proponent of changing the social and political situation of Black women in South Africa, and used every opportunity I had to raise the profile of women's rights. Who would have thought that today you'd be learning about a young girl from rural Eastern Cape named Charlotte Matay? What made my story different from that of my sisters, my neighbors, or fellow students? A supportive parenting environment, a value-based upbringing and a Christian worldview, mentorship and access that would afford me opportunities within which I could represent, as well as win the respect of my fellow countrymen and women. In a time where many of my achievements were improbable, the impossible was made possible, and I was able to rise. I have always believed in the principle of, if you rise, bring someone with you. And this is our vision for the Charlotte Matay Institution. I have shared my story with you in the hope that it may inspire your buy-in and motivate your support of our vision. I pray that you'll be among the first of many who will join us in our endeavor to create opportunities for our daughters to lead and to shine. There are many among us who have begun to make their mark in history. I believe there are many more waiting to rise and for the opportunity to excel. My name is Charlotte Mania Matay. I was the first Black South African woman to graduate from university with a degree. My story does not end here.
My name is Brigelia Dombem Sopebam, and I am one of the first women to be the chairperson of an electoral commission. My story does not end here.
My name is Sibongile Rejoice Sambo. I am the first South African Black woman to start an aviation company in the private jet space, providing helicopters and private jets. My story does not end here.
My name is Asnath Mahapa. I'm the first Black South African woman to acquire a commercial pilot license. My story does not end here.
My name is Dr. Musawenkosi Donia Salrumbe. I'm the youngest female PhD graduate in Africa. My story does not end here.
My name is Riboni Bella Mudisha, and I am the first Black woman to qualify as a PGA golf professional. my story does not end here.
My name is Zuleika Patel, and I am a Black female activist at the forefront of decolonization within schools and Black radical feminism movements within the country. My story does not end here.
My name is Michelle. I am 9 years old. I've published 2 books, and I'm the youngest author in Africa. My story does not end here.
What a powerful video, really, as somebody who championed and raised the profile of women's rights. So as you can see from all those amazing women of first, some of which are here today with us, they've told us part of their stories. Stories are just one powerful way and means of passing down lessons and knowledge from generation to generation, connecting both the past and the present, and ensuring that our icons are not forgotten. And with that, it gives me great pleasure to welcome our first speaker, who is going to be telling us about, the Heritage Month in general and the legacy of our stories. So I welcome the Director of Social Cohesion in the Department of Sports and Arts and Culture, Dr. Abraham Srote.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairperson. I nearly said Comrade Chairperson, but no, I will take that back. Thank you, young people. Thank you, colleagues from the Charlotte Mcgrade Institute, and thank you for the invitation, for extending the invitation to us as the Department of Sport, Arts and Culture, that we to be part of this activation today. I'm very excited that I will share a few words with you, learners. My first love, my first job in government was to work for the Department of Basic Education. And one of the things that I loved about the department was its vision for education, and it's how the department viewed education, how it theorized about education. 2 things stand out for me, and this is really a definition from Education for All, which is part of the UN project. In terms of the standard definition for education, we know that we go to school, number 1, for our cognitive development. So we go to school to gain particular sets of skills. We learn how to read and write. We learn how to be effectively literate and numerate at school, and that's important. But number 2, we go to school because school affords us an opportunity to be well-rounded individuals. So we go to school also for character development, so that we are able to be productive, useful members of society. So it doesn't help society to produce excellent mathematicians, excellent physicists, but who would in turn use that knowledge to harm society. And we know where we come from during the difficult days of apartheid that happened. We know how we use physics and chemistry to harm people. So our hope as people of this country, and I think this is the hope from government, is that we are not taking young people through to school to gain knowledge, to gain skills, and only to use those to harm society in turn. So, and this is why it's important that the Institute has brought you into this discussion today, because they recognize the fact that you are not just only at school to learn mathematics, you are not just only at school to learn physics, to learn how to read, to learn how to write, but you are at school as well to be responsible, active future members of society who will contribute positively to society, who will take part in the development of this country, who will be the guardians of the most vulnerable in society. And I think that's why the Charlotte Maxeke Institute has brought you into this program, into this heritage program. We know as well that Umama Charlotte Mania Maxeke was she was an educationist. She's a woman of many fasts, and education was a passion. So it is fitting that we are with you on this day to have a conversation on education, on heritage. If I could just remind you, the chairperson will know, and her colleagues in this honorable house, that Cabinet this year declared 2021 as the year of Charlotte Mania Maxeke. And what government has done is to look at opportunities in terms of honoring this great giant, this trailblazer, more so that she was a woman who was far ahead of her times. For somebody to have been to the US at the time, for somebody to have graduated at university in the US, to have earned a BSc degree at the time, that was a milestone. And so we are thankful for that. So government has recognized this trailblazer, this true champion of our human rights, this woman of many fasts, and we have sought to honor her in many different ways. I'm glad the Institute is looking at they have conceptualized the idea of opening up a girls' school, and it is my wish, Chairperson, that dream come into fruition. And as the Department of Sport, Arts and Culture, from Minister to the Accounting Officer, I think you have our unreserved support. And we're not just saying it in words, I think we are showing it in deeds. Our hope, Chairperson, is that this institute, with its very noble ideas, will get support from other relevant government departments and state entities in safeguarding the legacy of this giant woman. We are in Heritage Month, and some of you would be thinking, what is the connection then between heritage and education? Okay. Remember when I started, I said to you that we have twin purposes for education. So one, it's your cognitive development. Okay. I think this is one that you're quite familiar with, and your parents would be very familiar with that one. But the second one is that you go through an education system so that you become a responsible, active member of society, and that you those values of the Constitution in section 1 of the Constitution inhere in you, that they are part of your DNA and that you are able to contribute positively to society. So that's why we take you through education. So what is the connection between heritage we are talking about and education? It's very simple. And as I go on to conclude, most of you are quite familiar with, digital gadgets. I think you all have cell phones, right? You all have cell phones, no? You all have WhatsApp on your phones. You have Instagram on your phone. Some of you are underage. You should not be having Instagram on your phone. You have Facebook on your phone. Okay. Do you know that heritage and culture are very much intertwined with science? Actually, you can't talk about science, and innovation without talking about heritage and culture, because everything really comes from heritage and culture. Okay, our heritage, who we are, our collective history, our language, all of those influence the scientific direction we're going to take. They inspire scientific development. They inspire scientific innovation. So that's really the connection. The biggest export for Americans, it's not the iPhone really. It's not goods and services, but it's their culture. Okay, it's their movies, because their movies are about who they are, what they believe in, what it means to be an American. So they import their culture to us. They export their culture to us, and we buy it. Okay, so arts and culture actually is the backbone of the American economy. Everything else follows after that. And that's why most of you are so eager to imitate them, because that's what you get fed with on a daily basis. But then again, we want you to be champions of South Africa's culture, South Africa's heritage, South Africa's languages. Because your language as South Africans, or your languages, are a medium through which you explain yourself, through which you display your culture, through which you tell stories about yourself. So for you to be able to be a good messenger for South Africa in terms of South Africa's heritage, you have to be effectively literate. You have to know text. You have to know the power of text. So you have to be somebody who reads quite closely, and you have to be somebody who writes. And good writing comes from good sort of continuous reading. So it's going to be very important for you if you are going to be ambassadors of South Africa's culture, South Africa's heritage, South Africa's languages. You're gonna have to remain focused in your studies. You're gonna have to remain focused in being effectively numerate and literate, because otherwise, how then are you going to tell South Africa's stories if you can't read, if you can effectively read and write? So that's why your education is very important in terms of safeguarding South Africa's heritage. And do you know what's the focus of this month's heritage, 2021 heritage? Do you know the theme for this year? Okay, we don't know that. They didn't tell you during your life orientation online classes. They didn't. Yeah. So where we are now, I've told you already that Cabinet has declared 2021 as the year of Charlotte Mcgrade. So our theme is the year of Charlotte Mcgrade, celebrating South Africa's cultural intangible heritage. Okay. So an intangible heritage is those aspects of our heritage that we may not be able to touch. So we are not talking about artifacts. We are talking about histories. We are talking about folklore. We are talking about music, all forms of artistic expression that you may not touch, but you can feel, okay? That's what we are talking about when you talk about intangible cultural heritage. And think about what your contribution will be to South Africa's intangible cultural heritage. Song and dance. Are you gonna tell stories about, heroes and heroines in your community? Are you gonna write something about them? What do you think your role will be in displaying South Africa's rich intangible cultural heritage this year? So that would be the homework from me to you. Otherwise, Chair, I'm very honored to be part of this great occasion. It's taking me back home. It's a kind of a deja vu because I was with the department before and I did what they call a co-curricular program. And I'm very happy that the department is continuing to expose young people to other aspects of learning other than just classroom learning. So thank you very much, and may you enjoy the rest of this day. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sorote, on telling us so many lessons around how we use our education in reading and in writing, just to really become leaders of tomorrow. And I just want to quickly remind everybody to please keep your phones on silent as we continue through the program. And then I also would just like to ask every speaker to try and keep to the time, just so that we can have continuity with the program. But thank you so much, because now as we move on to the next speaker, first I'd love to tell you that yesterday the Charlotte Mania Matleke Institute and team took part in the first book drop in the Western Cape. They dropped off books for primary school children at the Where Rainbows Meet Community Center in Vrygrond in Miesenberg. And this was founded by Ms. Meimuna Scholz, who is now a recipient of the Bring Her Up Awards as part of the Charlotte Mania Matleke Institute's awards for her service to the community. And she's creating amazing impact in the work that she's doing. And then this morning, the team did a book drop at the Bookery in Cape Town, another key organization that's bringing literacy to schools around South Africa with great milestones and achievements. And thus, it gives me great pleasure to welcome Ms. Lunga Nqatolo, who's the managing director of the Bookery, to join us so that we can learn more about the work that they do. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to greet the Deputy Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, the Charlotte Matleke Institute, honored guests, and also I'd like to greet the learners. As mentioned, I am the Managing Director at the Bookery, and we create school libraries for schools in under-resourced communities. And we have created over 85 libraries in around the Western Cape, Eastern Cape, and Gauteng. So I would like to ask you learners, just by raising up your hands, how many of you have a library in your school? Oh, it's disheartening. But I will say that for you to be here is an honor, because I'm here to tell you the power that lies within a school library, the power that lies within a book. The ability to read, the ability and the power to read helps you to think analytically. It increases your vocabulary and comprehension. It improves your ability to express yourself and to participate successfully in today's information-driven, knowledge-based society. And you know what's more important is that you read books that speak to the true heritage of Africans. Books written by Ms. Zuleika Patel are one of the books that speak to our heritage. Books that speak to us as Africans is important, and that is one of our missions today. But I'm here to talk about the superpower in reading. The superpower in reading is when you realize that reading is just not for you. Education is just not for you. It is for you to use to uplift the others, the ones that are left behind. My story is that I am from a little village in Sakela, Mthatha, where we do not have running water, we do not have tarred roads, but here I sit addressing you. And that is the power of having access to a library. That is the power that is about having or being able to read. So I say to you, wherever you are, try to get your hand on a book. We speak about, we create books that have age-appropriate material. But if that is not available for you, read a newspaper. Read anything that you can get your hand on, because that increases your understanding, that increases your ability to comprehend what is written, so that you can go further your studies, and you can also then be able to come back here and sit on the seat and be amongst decision makers to effect change, because that is why we're here. That is what Mam Charlotte Mcgrade stood for, to lift as you rise. And that is our passion as a bookery, is to lift kids in under-resourced communities, because we understand that the future lies in their hands. The COVID pandemic has caused very disastrous impact on the literacy levels within our communities. And we cannot stand it, and we cannot let it be the future that we speak about, because we are here for generations. This here is for generations. This is for the next generation. So I would like, just to, in order not to take time, if all of you as learners, just recite an extract from a poem that I found as I was preparing for today, because it speaks to who we are. It speaks to the power that we hold, because as Africans, we have a power that is within us. It runs from the people that we come from, our forefathers, Matay, who stood for education. And if you can, with me, recite this poem. It is called African Child by Mcgrade from Sierra Leone. I, the son, daughter of the soil. Rich in texture and content. Full of potential for a better tomorrow. Teach me discipline, teach me character, teach me hard work. Teach me to think like the star within me. I am an African child. I can be extraordinary. Call me William Kakambe, the inventor. Give me a library with books. Give me a scrapyard and discarded electronics. Give me a broken bicycle. Plus the freedom to be me. I will build you a windmill. I am an African child. We are the new generation. Not afraid to be us. Uniquely gifted, Black and talented. Shining like stars that we are. We are the children of Africa. Making the best of us. Yes, I am an African child. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lunga. That was a very powerful poem, and I'm sure we can all take lessons from that poem. And in sharing your story, Hopefully all of you guys can reflect on where her beginnings took her, where she was sort of raised and how far she's gone since. In similar vein, Umam Charlotte also started out in, with small means, without much, and traveled across oceans and seas and saw no limitations to where she could go. And you know what helped her become even more powerful? Her education, being able to obtain a degree abroad. And so thank you for inspiring children of all ages to keep reading. And I'm going to just remind you of our theme for today, which is education is our heritage, reading is our superpower. And with that, I would like to welcome Ms. Lindo Mandela, who is the Director of Stakeholder Relations at the Mandela Legacy. And she's the mother of the authors of Granddad Mandela, who are here with us today, Zazi and Ziwelene Mandela. And Ms. Lindo Mandela is also an active reader, an initiator of programs that also encourage development of the youth. And she's here to tell us about why our stories matter.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me. I won't be long, but I just wanted to emphasize something, that our common heritage has always been embedded in our fight for justice. These stories connect bloodlines to purpose, and these become a roadmap with learnings on how we can realize our dreams. Feeding credible knowledge needs to be a great priority in a world with so many contestations, to allow us to make decisions that support our goals. Our stories are evidence and an imprint of our time here on earth. So I want to encourage all of you to recognize and understand that each and every one of your stories matters. Not just the heroes in the community, but you too. How you validate yourself, how you mark your own time on earth, and how that feeds into the greater story of who we are. And so I encourage you to read. I encourage you to be curious. I encourage you to ask questions. And I encourage you to just be. Thank you.
Thank you, Sis Lindo. And I think the next part of our program bears particular significance as we speak about the life of Ashley Creel. Now, Ashley Creel, for those who may not know, was a 20-year-old student, South African activist who was killed by the police in Cape Town in 1987 for his role in advocating against anti-apartheid actions. He is a symbol and a representative of students in the 80s and a symbol of youth resistance to bring about social change. So even 34 years after his murder, his life and story still matters and should not be forgotten. So let's learn a little bit more about him as we watch the next video.
In the 80s, Bonteheuvel responded to ever-increasing police action against them by forming the Bonteheuvel Military Wing, a self-defense unit drawn mainly from school children, many of whom were on the run from police.
That time we used to call it, we're going to have a day of action. Our day of action is violence.
We were told that there's a youngster at a primary school that is starting to organize.
Ashley was the head figure at our school, Untitled High, and he was at all times busy, ready to recruit and develop the students.
And we literally see him soaking it up.
We were youth who had no experience about freedom, he came to us and told us how to do things. Ashley was one of the guys who came to us and gave us pamphlets on how to make molotovs.
Many people criticize Ashley and them. They are mad. They are playing with their own lives. But Ashley was informed by thorough political discussion.
Now we were targeted. We had to be a step ahead of the police continuously.
There was always special guards, police watching, and it was horrible living like that.
I don't think Ashley wanted to be a hero. But you see in front of me is what I am, a servant of my people.
Long, tapered face with a mop of curly black hair. A lean, slender body dressed in khaki shirt and black beret. He was the Che Guevara of the Cape Flats.
Thank you. You know, that was a very powerful video. And I'm sure as you're all sitting here, we all get to sort of remember the icons who resisted in certain spaces and how they held their own. And hopefully that gives us all and instills within us the power that we all have in our own hearts that we can use to change society. And with that, I'd like to welcome Ms. Michelle Asher, who was Ashley Creel's sister.
Good morning, all. Good morning, all. Morning, Deputy Chair. All protocols observed. My name is Michelle Ashua. I am the elder sibling of the late Ashley Creel. Firstly, I would like to thank the Charlotte Mania Matay Institute and all the partners for inviting me to this momentous occasion. I feel honored and privileged to share my knowledge with our future. Who is our future? You are our future. Why we should keep on telling our stories. Our stories shapes our futures. We must preserve all those who sacrificed their lives in whichever way. We must preserve their stories and keep on telling stories. And as the previous speaker said, I believe we can also tell our own stories. It is important not only to remember Ashley Creel, but all others that gave up their lives for the freedoms that we can enjoy today, such as Ma Charlotte Mcgrade, Ma Albertina Sisulu. In our areas where we grew up, we have Anton Fransch, Colin Williams, and Robbie Waterwich. And this is but a few to mention. What is important to notice that these people gave up their lives for nothing in return, just for the purpose that they be treated as equals to everyone around them. Yes, I can honestly say that it is through people like them that we enjoy the liberties that we have today, such as free education, We can study wherever we want to, go to any school and go to any hospital. And we also have, today we have privileges to vote. My generation grew up not being able to go to any beach. I remember that we could not access our, just up the road here, we have the Cape Town station, and we couldn't access that station through the only white entrance, whites only entrance. We couldn't board any bus. Whites had to sit maybe downstairs if it's a double-decker bus, and any other colored races had to sit upstairs in the bus. And that is what we called segregation. And this is what the apartheid regime created, segregation between our people. And we said no to segregation. I am also an activist of more or less the same time when Ashley Creel was an activist. He became an activist at the primary school level, whilst I spent my first 2 years at the high school level. And we said no to gutter education. And we were beaten because we spoke up about the truth we spoke, and we were beaten. And we were hunted down by the by the police. Ashley he didn't even have the privilege to finish his matric because the police went to harass him within his classroom. The family went through trauma because each and every night the police would run down our doors looking for Ashley. But Ashley decided to fight this fight, and he decided to pay the ultimate price with his life. And today, I can say that that was his choice to pay the ultimate price. And nobody owes us nothing as the family. He paid the ultimate price. So these are slogans that we use during our activist days when we speak about gutter education. Each one teach one. And we sang songs that we don't want this gutter education and we don't want any segregation. Our people adopted the Freedom Charter, and we believed everything should be shared equally amongst our people. So learners and youth, today, what these individuals that sacrificed their lives wanted in particular was that students such as yourselves stand up and fight for what you believe in. Yes, we have democracy today. But the sad reality is that it is felt differently by everyone that lives in the Republic of South Africa. Education and telling our stories is our heritage indeed. And reading is our superpower. Thank you. Mandla.
Thank you so much, Ms. Michelle Usher, who has given us a very personal account of why it's important to tell stories. Because Ashley Creel's life mattered, and he gave his life fighting for a cause. I'd just like us to just observe a quick moment of silence in his memory. Okay, and with that, I'd like to take us through to the next part of the program. And, you know, an act of reading a book and doing it consistently can change your life forever. It changes the way you think about how you perceive experiences around you. A tool we need to sharpen in our own time, and in our homes and in our schools. So, keeping with the theme that education is our heritage and reading is our superpower, you know, we'd like to welcome the next speaker, who serves as the Deputy Chairperson on the National Council of Provinces in the Republic of South Africa, who is going to speak about why education is our heritage. I welcome Honorable Ms. Sylvia Lucas.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Program Director, the Chairperson of the Charlotte Mania Institute, Dr. Sirote from Sports, Arts and Culture, Ms. Matolo from the Bookery, the representative from the Mandela Legacy Foundation, Ms. Lindo Mandela. Ladies, gentlemen, our guests, particularly our learners present, I think you are the special guests today. And I just want to give recognition to you by due protocol. The Office of the Deputy Chairperson, particularly the manager, she's also present here, that was responsible together with the team to make sure that this become a reality. Now, when Ms. Michelle Azure was speaking, I thought just to say it is sometimes so difficult for our children to understand what it is what we are really narrating or speaking about. And this morning, I think we were reminded of the fact that this story is not yet at the end. And we are neglecting to remind our young people where we are coming from, because we treat them as if this freedom was free, and freedom was never free. I think we need to say that. I think, Zuleika, you experienced it, that freedom was never free, because you guys were actually demonstrating against the fact that you were not free to wear your hair the way you want to at the school that you attended, if I remember correctly. And that is in actual fact, a reminder that freedom was never free. And I think Tata Mandela said it once, this freedom didn't come cheap. It came on the blood and sacrifice of many people. And I think today, my experience is that our children doesn't want to hear that. They believe that whatever is happening now, it was always like that. And you actually reminded us today that don't ever take what we have today for granted. Don't ever take what we have today for granted. The input is surrounded around the theme of education is our heritage. That is something that I want to link to a very important topic, particularly in this age of the knowledge economy. The knowledge economy, which is about our ability as a collective to find solutions for the challenges that our societies face by reading and analyzing information and packaging it for the betterment of our society. Today's theme is also linked to what Malcolm X once said when he said, and I quote, "Education is our passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to the people who prepare for it today," close quote. Indeed, if you as the next generation and generations to come want to have a better future and create a more just, fair, and equal society, we have to begin to prepare for it now through the education that are provided for you as young people. To this end, the importance of and learning has been recognized since the beginning of time as a critical component of human evolution and overall development. The Greek philosopher Plato hence wrote, and I quote, "If a man neglects his education, he walks lame to the end of his life." A very profound saying, close quote. During the 20th century, education skills and the acquisition of knowledge have become crucial determinants of a person and a nation's productivity. One can even call the 20th century the age of human capital development, in the sense that the primary determinant of a country's standard of living is how well it succeeds in developing and utilizing the skills and knowledge and furthering the health and education of the majority of its population. Without uplifting the Black majority in general, and Africans in particular, through meaningful and robust involvement in their own development, inferiority complexes will remain, and a truly anti-racist, open and democratic society will not emerge effectively in South Africa. So I read yesterday, someone said, people fear the day that we wake up from the dream that they have been selling to us. And that dream, we should make it a reality for ourselves, because no one will make your dream a reality if you don't dream hard enough to be able to believe in that dream and in that reality. The most fundamental measure of a decent society is reflected in the quality of life of its children. The commitment to make sure that children have better opportunities than previous generations to develop their capabilities and performance as human beings is also a key indicator of the values of a successful society. Over and above the challenges of what is called the dual pandemics of COVID-19 and gender-based violence and femicide, we face additional scourges, such as the economic disempowerment of women. And most recently, we are addressing the scourge of teenage pregnancy, which is alarmingly on the rise. The number of children born to teen mothers in South Africa's most populated province, Gauteng, has jumped to 60% since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. With Save the Children concerned for the well-being of both those young mothers and babies. Early pregnancy and motherhood in South Africa forces many girls to drop out of school. It traps them in a cycle of poverty, leaving them dependent on public assistance, and leaves many stigmatized by society for being teenage mothers or forced into early marriage. I become very concerned if I see that the 350 have become such a kind of outcome for our young people. They are so dependent on something. 350 rand. Imagine, what do you do with 350? And I must say, I was surprised as to how dependent people have become on that 350. And they can tell me that we are doing so much with that money. And that means that it seemed to be as if our people have become hopeless and that they are actually satisfied with so little can give them hope. And that is why we become worried for these young girls that lose hope for the future when they become mothers at that very young age. I become very worried because the face of poverty is in any case a woman and black. And now our girls are really in that same, pushed into that same trajectory of being the face of poverty. And many of them, besides being dependent on this public assistance, are forced into early marriage, becoming a wife and a mother at a very young age, at the age where they are still supposed to be playing on the streets, enjoying their youth, just enjoying their youth. The global pandemic risks being a time of irreversible setback and lost progress for these girls in particular, and for children in general. Unless we act fast and decisively, the impact on their future and our future as this collective will become devastating. We are failing to live up to our national system of values at all levels of children's development path. If we are not going to act now, we will never have another Charlotte Mcgrade. In order for society to produce 1 million others like her, we will have to nurture and socialize our children and girls in particular to believe that they are valued, that they should be loved and respected. We will have to pursue education that is governed by the principles of democracy, that will ensure active participation by various groups, in particular teachers, parents, workers, and students, as well as civil society. The education system must also be based upon principles of cooperation, critical thinking, and civic responsibility. This aspiration can only be achieved through a culture of education and reading, particularly reading, because to become educated, you need to develop a love for reading, isn't it? Or am I not correct, Doc? You will actually correct me, but I believe that the basic foundation for a good education is to become an avid reader, to make sure that you understand, and they say read for meaning or write for understanding. I don't know, do I use the correct slogans? Mzwai, you will help me. Heritage Day should not be only a showcase of our country's rich cultural diversity. It is an opportunity to reflect on whether we as a country, with so much abundance of talent and natural resources, are in fact able to take care of its children and grow a nation endowed by the spirit and ethos of Mama Charlotte Mcgrade. It is an opportunity to do introspection and to self-criticize as a nation as to whether the ideals that many of those that went before us sacrificed their lives for are being achieved, or at the very least are being pursued. The success of this program, and when we really say education is our heritage, reading is our superpower, we need to nurture a love for reading and a love for books, particularly amongst you as young people. And really, I believe that the success of this program will depend on our collective commitment to ensure that every child across every province, district, and locality adopts this culture of reading so that they too may reap the rewards of a better life than the previous generation. It cannot be that we celebrate previous generations, but we do not emulate their example, because there are many good things that came out of struggle. There are many good things that came out of our experiences, and our struggle can never be in vain, because our struggle was to ensure a better life for generations like you. for the future. That is what the struggle was for. And sometimes when we are actually bombarded with negative messages, we begin to forget that this freedom was never free. And this democracy didn't come cheap. If you, just you that are here, can be the first ones to begin to bring in a different way of thinking, a different way of operation, then already we would have achieved what we have sacrificed for. So I hope that all of us will take out the message. You know, we are really very much like to actually quote Mandela. We like to quote Tata Madiba to say, Madiba says, it is only through education that the child of a peasant can become a doctor, that the child of a farm worker can become a parliamentarian. I'm quoting it freely. We love to quote him, but do we really live the kind of dreams that he had for future generations? Someone that was prepared to sacrifice his life. And I'm not saying it now because there is representatives from the Mandela family. The first version of Long Walk to Freedom, when it came out, it was a very thick book. It actually shrinked. And I read that first one, that very thick one. And I can tell you now, the dream that people like Charlotte Matay, Tata Madiba, and others had for us is to definitely have a better life than the one that they had before. That South Africa should be free. South Africans should be free in South Africa. That is what they strive for. And I really hope that this generation will be able, through their own education, to break the generational cycle of poverty and inequality. And that all of us will be able to contribute to a better South Africa. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Sylvia Lucas. I think we all agree that that was a very powerful, meaningful address, just telling us about, you know, how we honor the legacy of past heroes, but how we also need to emulate their example. And I think just as a small anecdote, you know, Umam Charlotte Matlege, as you all know, that she received her education, but also passed it on by creating and founding a school, the Wilberforce Institute in Everton. Now, at the time, as you know, not many people had access to education. And as a result, she kind of not just did her, got an education for herself, but imparted it on others. And so we are living legacies of people who have really put the foundational infrastructure for us to receive adequate education, and thus we should emulate their example.
Yes.
And it gives me this great pleasure to introduce the following speakers who have taken time to write about experiences not only of their own, but also to write about this icon. You know, part of storytelling is not just talking about, you know, passing on the knowledge through, you know, your own communities, but really the essence of creating and writing a book gives you endless, lifelong memories, lessons, and accounts of history. And The Calling of Katie Makanya, a book that was written by an American author about their life, Katie Makanya and Charlotte Matleke, gave us a lot about her early life, from which, you know, it is my pleasure to, while we have this author in this room today as well, who took on the journey to write about Mom Charlotte's life and give us more for us to take forward. And so without, you know, taking up too much space, I would love for the authors to tell you about their story and why they chose to write the books that they chose to write. I'll bring the first speaker, Ms. Zuleika Patel. She will be doing a reading from her book called My Coily Crowny Hair.
Good morning, everyone. Such an honor to be here. My name is Zuleika Patel. I am an anti-racism and a social justice activist, and I'm also a best-selling author of the book My Coily Crowny Hair. And I wrote this book. I started writing it when I was in grade 11, and this book is dedicated to African children across the world and beyond the African continent. And I wrote this book because I started reading at the age of 4. And I believe that I wouldn't have become even a dime of who I am today if it wasn't for reading, because in reading there lies knowledge that is hidden from the rest of the world. And I believe that it is so important for us to write our stories, because our stories make us who we are. And our stories don't just only need to be told for the sake of being told, but our stories carry solutions to a lot of our problems in them. And I say this because the stories of our past determine why we are where we are in our present, because our past has determined our present, and our present determines the future that we are headed to. And in order to sew all of those together, our stories need to be told, because our stories will unfold why it is that the inequalities that we grapple with today exist, and what are the kind of mechanisms we can use to fight those injustices, and who are the people that have already spearheaded fighting those injustices, who we can continue to take from and learn from. People such as the late Ashley Creel, whose stories should never be forgotten. And we are the ones to become the authors of continuing to write their legacy and continuing to fight the fight that they fought. And that's why it is so important that our stories are told. And I wrote this book because I believe that our stories need to be told by none other than ourselves, because we must speak about ourselves. We must tell the world about who we are. The world cannot determine who we are on their own terms. We must be the ones to tell the world who we are. And so I wanted to write a book that would positively represent Africa and would positively represent African children for the world to see. And so I'm going to read from a part where my main character, named Ulisa Kanya, visits the museum with her grandmother and her cousins on Africa Day. Lisa Kanya is excited to celebrate Africa Day with her cousins and Gogo. There is a celebration of the diverse and rich African continent at the museum. Everyone is dressed in their cultural clothing and filled with pride and joy. The tour guide walks Lisa Kanya, her cousins, and Gogo through the hall where African women are celebrated for their achievements. Look, Lisa Kanya, you have the same hairstyle as the African queen, Kensani says with excitement. You all have the same heart as the African queen. You are smart, brave, and proud of who you are, Gogo says. And just like all these amazing women, you can achieve great things, Gogo continues. You can be an engineer, a speaker, a teacher, or even a president. With your hair, you can be anything that you want to be. Lisa Kanya and her cousins enjoyed their visit to the museum. They learned a lot about history and their African heritage. They also enjoyed the delicious traditional food Gogo prepared for their Africa Day celebration. They ate mabele, tripe, and spinach. Is my hair also beautiful like the African queen, Gogo? Olerato asks. You have magnificent hair, Gogo replies. All our hair is beautiful, young queen, whether it is long, short, in dreadlocks, or in a duke. Gogo tells them more about their history and their heritage. Just like the African queen, their mothers and grandmothers would style their hair to express their culture, pride, and beauty. Young queens, do you know how much power our hair carries? Gogo asks Lisa Kanya and her cousins. Our hair is more than the way it looks and the way we style it, Gogo says. Let me tell you about the 1970s when an afro was a symbol of power and freedom. Oh, I remember how important and proud I felt standing firm, wearing my afro out, Gogo continues. Our hair is just magical. Every coil and curl carries a story of who we are. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Zuleika Patel. We look forward to seeing many more stories that you will write about, and also encouraging other people from your example to also write their own stories. I think it's also a great privilege to, welcome two young storytellers who have written a book about their granddad. And their granddad, who we naturally knew, our great granddad, that we naturally knew as Utata Nelson Mandela. Now, when they wrote these young authors, of course, they will do the reading. But I think it's just such a beautiful way for you guys to start at your tender age, to start telling your stories from your perspective, from a personal experience. So I welcome Mzazi Mandela and Mr. Ziwelene Mandela to do the reading from the book, Granddad Mandela.
Hi, I am reading from page 21 and 22. Were other people wanting justice too? Asked Ziwelene. Yes, Granddad wasn't the only one who felt that apartheid was wrong, said Grandma Zinzi. The whole world said it was evil and Black people didn't like the way they were being treated. When white people would tell them they weren't good enough, they wanted to fight. They thought if Granddad and Big Mommy could fight and even go to prison to get justice, they could too. Hello, my name is Zazi Mandela, and today I will be reading from page 23 of the book Granddad Mandela. Why did the government make Granddad stay in prison for so long? Asked Ziwelene. They kept him in prison because they hoped that the longer he stayed, the more tired he would become, and he would give up fighting for his people. But he didn't. And they hoped that people would forget him and what he stood for. But they didn't. Big Mommy, me, and many other people carried on fighting for freedom. All of these people kept Granddad's spirit alive.
Thank you, Zazi and Ziwelene. And you are keeping your great granddad's memory alive through the book that you have shared with us. And thus, another author for which we owe a great deal for the way that she has encapsulated the memory of Umam Charlotte through dedicated research and writing and putting together different stories. We are privileged to welcome Zubeda Jaffer, who will tell us about, the book of Umam Charlotte Mcgrade. And she will be reading about our generation from the book titled Beauty of the Heart, The Life and Times of Charlotte Mania Mcgrade.
Do I fix this? Okay. Thank you very much. It's a delight to be here. Ma'am Sylvia Lucas, I haven't seen you for quite some time, but it's wonderful to be here with you. I and everybody, you know, in the hall, in the room. I've been asked to read from the book on Charlotte Mcgrade that I've written called Beauty of the Heart, The Life and Times of Charlotte Mania Mcgrade. And I've also been asked to read on an excerpt from Our Generation, which was the first book that I wrote, because there's a chapter on Ashley Creel. So I will do that as briefly as I possibly can, because I know you've all been sitting here for quite a while. But to say to you that when I was, when I was in grade 11, which was then standard 9, my father said to me that I must become a journalist. And in my mind, this was an impossibility. I thought to myself that I didn't know any journalists at that time. We were confined to one group area, which is the colored group area. We never met people from other racial groups. And certainly I never had met a journalist. And when my dad said that to me, and I want you to understand this, I didn't have the confidence to believe that I could do this. Even though I was a good writer, I didn't have the confidence, and I doubted myself. And when I look back, I'm a pensioner now. It's many, many years later. It's, you know, over 40, 50 years later from that time. I realized that I've seen that I could do what my dad asked me to do. And in fact, I have here 3 books. The one is Beauty of the Heart, The Life and Times of Charlotte Mania Mcgrade, starting in 1871. Then Love in the Time of Treason, which is the story of Aisha Dawood of Worcester for the 40s and the 50s. And then Our Generation, which is my story, the journey of my emotions, that goes on to 2001. And last year during COVID, I realized that I have 3 books that covers 130 years of South African history. And I realized that I must put it on offer to everybody, because it tells the stories of the different periods of our efforts to secure a democracy and to secure a just and fair South Africa. As we've heard here earlier on, we are not there yet. We have got a lot to do, but the fact is we are very, very long way from where we were. So with those few words, I'm going to, and of course I can speak on and on, I mean, if you let me do, but I will behave and I will, keep it brief. I'm going to read from the chapter 4, Becoming a Graduate. So as you know, Ma'am Charlotte Mcgrade became our first female graduate. And this was way back in the 1800s. And she could not study in South Africa because the universities were just for whites. And so she got an opportunity to travel to the US through a choir where she was going to sing. She and the choir had sung, South African choir, the Jubilee choir, had sung in Britain. and now they were getting an opportunity to send to sing in the United States. So I'm going to start reading from that point. 3 months after arriving back home, Charlotte left for America. Her journey across the seas in 1894 was not easy. There was a terrible storm, forcing those aboard to stay in locked cabins for days. Imagine the 23-year-old young woman rocking in her bunk. She was already a teacher then, rocking in her bunk and dreaming of finding a way to further her education. Could there have been moments when she thought that her dreams would end at sea? All she was certain of then was that if she made it to the shores of America, she would be singing as part of the choir. She had no idea how this would convert into her aim of finding a place of study at a university. Could her mind have wandered to Titus Mbongwe, who had left Kimberley with so much hope and then was killed in a train crash in a faraway country? That was another student. Was she plagued with doubts, or was she comfortable in her youthful certainty? The problem seemed to solve itself. After a few months of touring, the choir once again hit a wall of financial troubles, as it had done in England. The English managers abandoned them and left them stranded, as it had happened in Britain. Fortunately, the story of their plight was reported in the local newspapers and attracted the attention of the ministers of the African Methodist Episcopalian Church, the AME Church, who came to their rescue. They offered Charlotte and 5 other South Africans the opportunity of studying at Wilberforce University in Ohio. It was as if her dream fell into place from the sky, like a burst of light rain on a hot summer's day, completely out of the blue. The vision she had held onto firmly in her mind for years was about to become her reality. And soon she found herself on the way to green country in rural Ohio to enroll at a university that was the first American institution of higher education owned and run by African Americans. She landed in the middle of an intellectual ferment where former slaves, now free Black men and women, were carving out a new path, focusing on public education and anti-slavery activism. This is 1894. She cleared a path for us, for all of us, so that we can sit here today and we can, think much larger than she was able. Well, she thought pretty large, but we can extend our thinking beyond that. I just want to end this reading with a statement by her teacher, W.E.B. Du Bois. W.E.B. Du Bois was one of the most amazing intellectuals of the 20th century, and he happened to be her teacher. And he, 30 years after Mum Charlotte graduated and was at the university, he wrote this about her. He said, "We were interested in Charlotte Mania because of her clear mind, her fund of subtle humor, and the straightforward honesty of her character. She was having difficulties with language in the new environment, but she did her work with a slow, quiet determination that augured well for her future. I've had the opportunity of following her work through the glimpses which I've had from far off South Africa." And then he said, just imagine your teacher says this about you in 30 years' time. "I regard Mrs. Mcgrade as a pioneer in one of the greatest of human causes, working under extraordinarily difficult circumstances to lead a people in the face of prejudice, not only against their race, but against their sex. To fight not simply the natural and inherent difficulties of education and social uplift, but to fight with little money and little outside aid was indeed a tremendous task. I think that what Mrs. Mcgrade has accomplished should encourage all men, and specifically those of African descent. And in addition to that, it should inspire the white residents of South Africa and of America to revise hastily made judgments concerning the possibilities of the Negro race. Thank you very much. I'm just checking if that was 5 minutes because I don't want to overrun my time. It's okay. It really touches me to be asked to read from our generation. This is myself and my daughter. All those years ago, of course, I look very young there, but I'm not that young anymore. I'm very touched because I'm going to read a little bit from the chapter on Ashley Creel. And it's a difficult chapter to read, but I've been privileged to be present through these events and have recorded it diligently. I am so happy that Michelle is here and she spoke so beautifully because I've known Michelle all this while, all these many years, virtually 40 years, is it, Michelle? And I knew their mother very well. She was an amazing woman, really endured a lot. But I'm going to read to you just a little bit about the day when Ashley was being buried. It's early Saturday morning and I leave Rushka at home because I sense that today is going to be hard. Reaching Bonteheuwel, a sprawling township on the Cape Flats, takes less than 20 minutes from our home in Wynberg. I park my car on the sandy sidewalk and walk towards a small council house belonging to Ivy Creel. Activists are dotted all along the fence in front of the house, and in the small barren space meant for a garden, now filled with plastic chairs, I pass through them, nodding a silent greeting which they return. Those who are speaking to one another are whispering. I join the line of family members as they slowly file past the body. Ashley Creel is lying flat on his back in the coffin in the middle of a tiny room. There's hardly space to move. And then I see his face. I look but cannot see. Yet I do see. His forehead is swollen. His eyes are closed. A deep gash leaping out of his forehead has been stitched up by the coroner. The dark curls are brushed back. In that split second, my eyes blur and I feel my knees bending. A sharp pain shoots through my chest. A comrade hoists me up under my arm, steadying me. I'm helped up the narrow steps to a bedroom upstairs where I find Ashley's sister, Melanie. We are both crying. I know that I had to look at him sometime. I was reluctant because I wanted to remember him as I knew him. But it would have been strange for me not to be part of that family ritual. Melanie, unlike her sister Michelle, is unable to function. While 24-year-old Michelle is in the kitchen below helping visitors to the family home, her sister, sedated the night before, cannot stop crying. It is Michelle, strong Michelle, dear Michelle. It was Michelle who had called me a week ago at UWC and given me the news. Zubaida, the police have shot Ashley. They took me to see his body in the morgue this afternoon. Please tell everybody. I became icy cold, as if a winter chill had descended on my office. I cut out, suppressing all emotions. Where's your mother? Don't worry, I'll be there as soon as I can, I said. I left work immediately, thinking about the need to form a funeral committee, finding lawyers to investigate the killing, raising the money to help the family. There was no time to deal with emotions. Organizing often became a way of coping with the horrors that we dealt with daily. We had to Be strong for the family, for the community, hiding how completely shattered we were. I'm just jumping a little bit. I used to watch Ashley closely when he rose to address the crowds at meetings of the United Democratic Front. I was never quite sure whether it was his political rhetoric or his personal charisma that set the crowd off. Viva Ashley Creel, Igama Lama Ashley Creel, Mali Bongwe, and the song would go. He had this way of raising his arm alongside his ear when he shouted Amandla, power, to which the crowd responded tumultuously, Gawetu, to the people. All speakers ended their speeches with those words, but not all raised their right arm as Ashley did. Some right arms were pushed forward diagonally with their fists clenched. Other arms were bent at the elbow at a kind of right angle to the shoulder. Ashley's arm was always straight in the air with 4 fingers clenched in a fist and the thumb extended, the ANC power salute. The extension of his arm elongated his body, giving him a new kind of height, which added a further dimension to his defined words. I could see the young women comrades in the audience tantalized by his charm. Although the sexual appeal would also have been dominant amongst the women, he had his male admirers too. The combination of personal charm and political commitment made him a youth leader of great attraction. He was the Che Guevara of the Cape Flats, long tapered face with a mop of curly black hair, a lean, slender body dressed in khaki shirt and black beret. We were all proud, were very proud of him. Thank you. Thank you very much. Where do I press it? Oh, okay.
Thank you, Mom Zubeda, for sharing with us 3 very powerful books in your journey as a storyteller, whether it was, your work as a journalist and certainly now your work as an author. So with that, we're coming to the conclusion of this program, which has brought together so many powerful people in our country around the theme of education. And I invite you guys to think about a question, any question that you may have for these 3 amazing authors that we've got here with us. And I'll just start us off with the first question, and maybe I'll address this to Ms. Zuleika. And the first question, just to open us up, is tell us about, what inspired the writing of your book, and what are you hoping that we learn from it?
There are a couple of things that inspired the writing of my book. Firstly, I wanted to not just be part of the crowd that seeks and demands representation, but be part of the crowd that propels everyone in bringing forth representation. Because as I said, I started reading at the age of 4, but as a child, I never got to see books that represented my reality and books that I could relate to, that had characters that looked like me, characters that did things like me, characters that somewhat had a world that looked like mine and was defined like mine. And so I wanted to write stories about characters that looked like me, that had a world like mine, and did things that I did, in order to normalize my kind of world and in order to affirm the kind of world that I live in, right? And then secondly, what also inspired writing my book was I wanted to give children a a tool which would affirm them, to know that they're valid and that they matter and that their voices matter and that their voices form an integral part of their identity, which doesn't only need to be made valid when they turn 18 and you're told that then you are a legal citizen of the country and that's when you matter. I wanted a child to know that from the time they're 2, 3, 4, 5, they matter. And thirdly, what also inspired it was I wanted what we did in 2016, me and my peers at the time at Pretoria High School for Girls, I wanted what was at the heart of our movement and was what was at the center of our movement. I wanted that to be documented in a permanent reference for centuries to come, for a Black girl 100 years from now to be able to pick up a book and know that once in 2016, there was a message that we had and we felt that was valid, which we could no longer keep to ourselves and we had to voice out. And what I hope that this book will be, I hope that this book will not only just live for centuries to come, but I hope that this book will become a tool which propels young people to know that they're valid and that their identities are powerful, and that will then affirm them to exist in all of their power. And I hope that it would also be a permanent reference of the message that was at the heart of the movement in 2016.
Thank you, Zuleika. And we're going to take 2 questions from the audience. So think about your question. And when you do speak, so raise your hands. And when you do speak, please push the button with the, where the microphone button is, and speak clearly into the mic for any of our authors. So I open it to the floor. Any takers? Don't be shy. Should I pick on anybody? Okay, all right. So while you think of your next question, whoever a brave soul that may be sitting among us, will take one. So I'll ask the next question. And I'll actually ask, whether it's Zazi or Zwelin, any of you can answer. But why do you think reading is a superpower? And why do you think that matters? Don't forget to push the speaker.
I think it matters because then you can learn different things and you can learn about other people's stories, maybe if they lived before you, and you can pass on their stories and carry on their message to others.
And thank you so much. That is very, very true. We can pass on that message to others. So I encourage anybody for our last question, if anybody has a question, to raise their hand. Going once, going twice. Okay. Ms. Lunga?
Thank you very much, Program Director. I think I have a question and any of the authors can answer me. In a world where libraries and access to reading and proper material that speaks about our stories, how would you encourage the learners sitting here that they are able to get access to these books, but also books that go beyond what is already available? Because as I was listening to Ms. Zubeida, I was quite encouraged to just go read about our history. But then I realized that when I asked of the learners sitting here, they don't have libraries at school and they don't have access. And the question is, beyond the books, how do they find the material? Because it has to be proper material that speaks and tells the truth of the African story.
Okay, and then I think maybe if Ms. Zubeida, do you want to answer that question? Or perhaps maybe I can hand it over to Zuleika. If Mam Zubeida, are you happy to take that question? Okay. Okay, so because we're running out of time, so we just ask maybe you just say 1 or 2 sentences, and then we can bring the program to a close. So 1 or 2 sentences, just repeat the question very briefly. Lunga?
I think quickly is where can learners without access to these resources learn more about the history of South Africa and our history as Africans?
I think that then brings me to just speaking about storytelling, because storytelling isn't just only centered around books. It's also about engaging with people, because in order to get to a point where we write those books, we need to acquire the knowledge to write those books. And so it also a very important part of finding that history when you cannot access a certain part of it is engaging with people that were part of it, and speaking to our neighbors and creating the culture of Ubuntu and unitedness in our communities. So really engaging with people in our communities.
Thanks, Leka. And 1 or 2 sentences from you, Mam Zubeda?
I would say that there's so much on the internet now. There's so many talks, so many statements on, if you go into YouTube, you can find, for example, a lot of my talks. And so you can encourage your teachers to allow you to, or ask the teachers to play some of these things in your classrooms. So that doesn't help with the reading issue, but it does help with the information and knowledge issue. So yeah, I think there are ways around this. And we just have to be passionate about finding the information.
Thank you guys so much for being here with us. And thank you to our authors who have given us tools to take forward with us. And with that, we're bringing this beautiful program to a close. Yeah, I think for us, I don't want to take too much space, but really today has been amazing. And I'm going to repeat the line that we need to take with us. And I'm sure by now you remember it. It is, education is our heritage. Reading is our superpower. Reading is our
superpower.
Fantastic. Thank you all so much. I'm going to hand over to our Deputy Chair, Honorable. Please, can you bring the program to a close?
Thank you very much, Program Director. You know, sometimes we don't think at our age there is still things that can happen that can take you by surprise, or that can really make you feel so fulfilled. Let me put it like that. And this is clearly one of the programs today that put us on a different level. So I want to express our appreciation to everyone present, particularly to those that actually initiated the program. Thank you very much, particularly the CMMI. We like to speak like that, Miss. Charlotte Mcgrade Institute. To all our authors, you know, I'm so inspired. Comrade Zubaida, I think we, from time to time, and you must know, you must be very prepared because we are planning something. We still need to discuss it with the speaker, the institute. We must still discuss it with the speaker. We are planning something, and I think you must know you will be on the program, God willing. You will be on the program. So it is very important that we take what we have learned today serious. We have been watched by many people. I hope many young people particularly have actually followed what we have been doing here today. And let me generally just be very general and say thank you very much to everyone that have been part of this program. And knowledge is indeed power. And now I've heard a new slogan, reading is super power. Thank you for that. I'm sure this will take us very far. Go well. Thank you. And stay safe.
Okay, it seems I actually fibbed. We do have one last person that we have to introduce just to close us off after Honorable Sylvia Lucas. So I think now I'd like to welcome, someone who has taken the mission of Mam Charlotte Matleke very far. The name that we know as Mam Charlotte Matleke is through the work of the Charlotte Mania Matleke Institute. I welcome the chair, my uncle, Mr. Tulasizo Makanya.
Good afternoon, everyone. Special greeting to the students that are here this afternoon. Protocol won't allow me to speak after the closing of this important event, after this deputy chairperson have spoken. But mine is to emphasize the messaging around the event today. Education is our heritage, reading is our superpower. With those words, you are saying it is high time that we take our reading to the next level as a country. And we hope that through the seed we've planted today, we will have young people who have more knowledge, more stories to tell, and also the beneficiaries will be the younger generation and the generation after us. To our learners that are here this afternoon, Nobantu Primary School in Kukuletu, Bondhevel High School, a school that nurtured Comrade Ashley Creel, Bridgetown High School in Aklon. We're extending our hands and our wish is that we have a relationship beyond this day. And whatever that you'll be getting as a donation from us, we'll want to see young people that will be in the future leaders of our country at different levels. This country needs you to redefine and define your future. So we hope that will empower you to be able to reach those standards of taking us to the next level as a country. To also the viewers on social media and parliamentary television 408, we thank for the time that you have spent watching this program. Ours as an institute of this icon, Charlotte Mania Matleke, it's mainly around preserving her legacy, promoting her legacy, and also celebrating her legacy, her teachings, what she stood for, her mission. We have a number of activities that we've started as an institute, but we are grateful for the work that, or the support from our government through declaring year 2021 as the year of Child Matleke. For the first time, to many young people in this country, they have attached the name to a person. Before, it was more of this icon, or through the naming of this Johannesburg, the hospital in Johannesburg, it was attached to a hospital mainly, especially in Gauteng. But now we're happy that through our work, through our relationship with government, especially DSEC, Department of Sports, Arts and Culture, we're able to elevate the name. But also we're hoping that through these celebrations, we elevate other icons, as today we were able to link the name Charles Mcgrade with Ashley Creel. So we are grateful, we thank you. But now the next step will be for us as an institute to also, the reason that we're here is also to be able to share or to donate some of the books to the students and learners that are here. Our 4 books that we have for you are Beauty of the Heart, The Life and Times of Charles Mcgrade, by the author that was here earlier on, Zubeida Jaffa. The second one is Our Generation, also by Zubeida Jaffa. Granddad Mandela by Zazi and Ziwelele Mandela. And My Coily Crowny Hair by Zuleika Patel. So we'll request that a letter representative from each school should come and maybe on behalf of all learners from that school to come and collect what will be our contribution to them, to their schools this afternoon. So we've got a letter representative from Nobandu Primary School that will come.
Okay. Can you please come to the front for a socially distanced group photo with your masks? A representative from each school, just anyone. Thank you. Come to the front. And then the authors, can I call upon the authors to also come join this photo? Thank you guys so much. After this photo, while they're getting ready, everybody please note that lunch will be served outside. But in the meantime, let's take the photo. Thank you so much.
As I'm concluding, I just want us to maybe all after me so that we can remember her words. Maybe after me, we just quote or repeat after me her famous quote. This work is not for yourself.
This work is not for yourself.
Kill the spirit of self. Do not live above your people, but live with them. And if you can rise, bring someone with you. And if you can rise, bring someone with you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you guys. And as you all start to get up, just know that lunch is served in the Newing restaurant to your right. As you exit, turn right. Thank you guys so much. It is a pleasure and an honor to have had you here.
So we just have to take the details.